They thought 3,900 passing yards, an NFC North crown, and a postseason surge would earn Caleb Williams his respect. Instead, the NFL looked at Chicago's breakthrough season and decided it was a fluke. 51. That is where his own peers ranked him, behind lesser quarterbacks, behind mediocre stats, and right underneath a national narrative claiming he's already peaked. But while the national media uses that ranking to write his obituary, they missed the lethal transformation happening behind closed doors at Hallas Hall. Caleb didn't just take that disrespect personally, he used it to completely re-engineer his game. What you are about to see isn't just a year two breakdown. It is the story of how Ben Johnson rebuilt this entire offense for total revenge, why the rest of the league just walked straight into a trap, and how Chicago's franchise quarterback is about to force every single critic in America to issue a public apology. Walk into the concourses of Soldier Field on a cold November afternoon, and you can still hear the echo of a city that spent nearly a century starving for a true modern quarterback. For decades, the Chicago Bears were defined by brutal defenses, relentless running backs, and a passing game trapped in a perpetual time loop. Then came 2025. Caleb Williams did not just step into the historical ghost town of Chicago passing mechanics, he tore the entire blueprint to the ground. In just his second season in the league, he threw for 3,942 yards. He executed fourth-quarter comebacks with an ice-cold, surgical precision that made veteran secondary coaches look helpless. He commanded the huddle like a 5-year veteran, navigating the mental gauntlet of the NFC North to deliver Chicago its first division crown in years. By every objective metric, every tape analysis, and every historic standard of quarterback progression, Caleb Williams had officially arrived as an elite star. Yet when the NFL unveiled its annual top 100 list, a ranking voted on strictly by the players who actually strap on pads and line up across from him, the league delivered a cold collective slap to the face of the entire city. Number 51. Read that number again and absorb the sheer absurdity of it. 51 places down the board, beneath quarterbacks who threw more interceptions in cleaner pockets, beneath signal callers who folded the second a defensive coordinator brought cover zero pressure on 3rd and long. The consensus coming out of rival locker rooms was as unmistakable as it was insulting. Caleb's explosive second year was treated as an illusion. The national pundits, eager to validate their own pre-draft anxieties, immediately seized the microphone to push a convenient new narrative. They claimed Caleb had hit his ceiling. They argued that his production was simply the cosmetic byproduct of head coach Ben Johnson's brilliant scheme, suggesting that any functional starting quarterback in the league could have racked up those same numbers inside that system. They framed his miraculous escape act playmaking as unsustainable luck, warning that defensive coordinators across the league had already cracked his code heading into 2026. According to the national consensus, Caleb Williams wasn't an ascending superstar preparing to take over the conference. He was a flash in the pan who had benefited from an easy schedule and a scheme that masked his fundamental flaws. If you think those quiet whispers and public rankings didn't penetrate the walls of Hallas Hall, you do not understand the psyche of the man wearing number 18. Caleb Williams does not operate like standard players who offer diplomatic corporate answers at press conference podiums. He tracks the noise. He remembers every headline, every snub, and every voter who left his name off their ballot. That number 51 didn't just rattle through the facility, it lit a raging inferno inside Lake Forest. The national media believes they are watching a young quarterback who got lucky and hit his peak. What they fail to realize is that by disrespecting his second-year achievements, they have unwittingly unlocked the most dangerous version of Caleb Williams imaginable. They think they are setting up his downfall, but in reality, that 51 ranking just guaranteed that every defensive back on Chicago's 2026 schedule is about to pay the ultimate price. To understand why 51 other players managed to convince themselves that Caleb Williams isn't elite, you have to do what the scouts, opposing defensive coordinators, and film junkies do every single week. You have to turn off the primetime highlights, roll back the tape, and stare directly at the cold, unvarnished film. Because beneath the eye-popping off-script throws and the thrilling fourth-quarter comebacks lies the precise ammunition that his doubters used to justify their disrespect. When you pull up the All-22 tape from 2025, the film reveals a player operating in two completely different realities. On one hand, you see a generational talent capable of making throws that only 3 or 4 human beings on planet Earth can even dream of executing. On the other hand, you see the agonizing growing pains of a young quarterback still waging war against his own instinct to turn every single down into a miraculous blockbuster event. The most glaring flaw, weaponized by national critics, is Caleb's obsession with the hero play. When protection holds and the play stays on schedule, his arm talent is devastating. But the moment a pass rush breaches the pocket or the first read is blanketed, a switch flips inside his mind. Instead of taking the easy 4-yard checkdown to reset the downs, Caleb will spin back out of the pocket, retreat 10 yards into the backfield, and attempt to buy 3 extra seconds of chaotic improvisational time. In 2025, that instinct generated unbelievable highlights that flooded social media, but it also led to soul-crushing drive killers, avoidable sacks that flipped field position, unforced intentional grounding penalties, and high-risk throws into double coverage that gave opposing safeties free opportunities on the ball. Then there were the mid-game lulls that left Chicago fans gripping their seats in frustration. Entire quarters would pass where the offense seemed to drift into a bizarre, stagnant trance. You would watch 3 consecutive drives stall out because of a delayed mental trigger, a fraction of a second hesitation on a slant route, a slight drift in his drop-back depth that compromised the tackle's blocking angle, or a misfire on a routine hot route against a zero blitz. To the untrained eye, these looked like minor mechanical blips. To veteran NFL defenders and defensive coordinators, they are blood in the water. Rival players didn't rank Caleb at 51 because they doubted his arm strength or his athletic gifts. They ranked him there because they saw a quarterback who, down for down, still left food on the table. They saw a player whose floor was far lower than his sky-high ceiling, a signal caller who would trade 3 easy rhythm completions for 1 low-percentage attempt downfield. Pundits jumped on this tape study to argue that Caleb was a volatility nightmare, an adrenaline junkie behind center who relied too heavily on off-script magic rather than mastering the subtle, boring mechanics of playing point guard in Ben Johnson's offense. This is the central tension defining Caleb Williams' young career. The national narrative has locked him into a box, a talented playmaker whose inconsistencies prevent him from sitting at the table with the league's true elite. His critics look at those film study flaws and declare that his second-year numbers were inflated, predicting that defenses will clamp down on his tendencies in 2026. They believe his bad habits are hardwired into his DNA as a passer. What those critics fail to realize, however, is that identifying a flaw on tape is one thing. Assuming a worker with Caleb's maniacal work ethic won't fix it is an entirely fatal mistake. The film from 2025 gave his doubters all the evidence they needed to write him off. But as the doors shut on Lake Forest, heading into the new season, those exact same film clips became the primary targets of a systematic offensive revolution. When Ben Johnson locked himself inside the film room at Hallas Hall following Chicago's playoff exit, he didn't see a broken quarterback. He saw an offensive structure that was forcing its most gifted generator to play with one hand tied behind his back. Johnson recognized that the national narratives surrounding Caleb's mid-season lulls were completely misdiagnosing the problem. The issue wasn't that Caleb lacked the field vision to process NFL coverages. It was that the offense's timing forced him to hold the ball a split second too long, leaving him vulnerable to relentless front four pressure. To elevate Caleb from a brilliant improviser into an unshakable, top-tier distributor, Johnson knew he didn't need to strip away Caleb's natural playmaking instinct. He needed to completely re-engineer the offensive rhythm built around him. The first seismic shift in Johnson's master plan arrived with the bold, aggressive decision to trade veteran receiver DJ Moore. To outside observers, shipping away a high-volume wideout seemed like a head-scratching gamble that stripped the offense of proven production. To Johnson and the front office, however, it was a necessary tactical evolution. The old receiving framework created a subtle operational drag on Caleb's dropbacks, often encouraging him to lock onto primary boundary reads and wait for long-developing double moves to unfold downfield. By clearing that space, Johnson redesigned the offensive architecture from the ground up, pivoting toward a fast-paced space creation scheme engineered around hyper-quick processing and instant distribution. At the heart of this year 2 transformation is the lethal tactical pairing of tight end Colston Loveland and second-year star Rome Odunze. Johnson recognized that to eliminate Caleb's fatal habit of drifting backward under pressure, the offense needed immediate high-leverage release valves built directly into his pre-snap reads. Enter Loveland, whose rare combination of frame, route-running precision, and vertical seam threat makes him an immediate nightmare for opposing linebackers and safeties. Instead of Caleb having to buy 4 extra seconds on his feet while deep routes cleared out, Johnson's new play design utilizes Loveland as a rapid-fire middle-of-the-field anchor. The moment an opposing coordinator dials up a heavy blitz or disguises coverage at the snap, Caleb no longer has to roll out into harm's way. He has an instant, mismatch-winning outlet sitting right in the heart of the defense. Working in perfect tandem with Loveland is Rome Odunze, whose role has expanded into a focal point of the passing game. Johnson has alignment shifted Odunze across the formation, using pre-snap motion to give Caleb pre-snap clarity before the ball ever touches his hands. Whether lining up in the slot to attack soft zones or commanding single coverage on quick-hitter slant routes, Odunze provides Caleb with a reliable, physically dominant target on early downs. This dual-threat safety net transforms third and long emergencies into manageable third and short situations, systematically stripping away the exact drive-stalling misfires that critics weaponized against him during his second year. What Johnson has built for 2026 is an offensive system that systematically removes the mental processing delay. In 2025, when defenses brought exotic pressure looks, you could see a microsecond of hesitation in Caleb's dropback, that brief, costly pause where he weighed taking the simple completion against hunting for the blockbuster play. Johnson's modified system forces the ball out of his hands in 2.3 seconds or less, turning Caleb into a lethal, cadence-driven executioner. The offense now dictates terms to the defense, making blitzing Caleb an exercise in pure suicide. This isn't about curbing Caleb's magic, it's about weaponizing it with extreme efficiency. When defenses drop 8 into coverage to protect against the quick game, Caleb still retains the green light to drop his arm angle and extend plays outside the pocket. But now, he does it from a position of absolute control, rather than desperate panic. Ben Johnson hasn't just tweaked the playbook heading into year 2, he has built a terrifying offensive machine designed to turn Caleb Williams' greatest weakness into the ultimate weapon of revenge. As the hot July sun beats down on the grass at Hallas Hall, the atmosphere surrounding early training camp feels less like routine summer practices and more like an open war zone. The soft hum of off-season optimism has been stripped away, replaced by the violent clack of shoulder pads, the screech of cleats digging into turf, and the relentless, aggressive bark of a quarterback who refuses to let a single detail slip. If 2025 was defined by Caleb Williams finding his footing in the NFL, the opening days of 2026 training camp have made one thing crystal clear: Caleb has completely seized control of this team's soul. The most jarring shift reported out of Lake Forest isn't physical, it's vocal. Gone is the quiet young starter who deferred to veterans or waited for coaches to direct the tempo. Caleb has transformed into a demanding, almost ruthless presence in the huddle. Reporters watching from the sidelines describe a quarterback operating with a visible, edge-of-your-seat intensity. When a wide receiver rounds off a route by a half yard or a running back misses a blitz pickup during 11-on-11 drills, Caleb doesn't wait for Ben Johnson to step in. He resets the huddle himself, getting directly into his teammates' faces and demanding flawless execution. He is setting a standard where good enough is treated like an outright failure. This newly minted authority is being forged in the furnace of daily, brutal practice battles against defensive coordinator Dennis Allen's revamped unit. Allen, known across the league for his sophisticated blitz packages and aggressive coverage disguises, has brought a suffocating defensive look to Chicago. On almost every snap, Allen's defense brings chaotic front seven pressure, collapsing the pocket and throwing exotic pre-snap looks specifically designed to rattle a young passer. In previous years, these high-pressure practice environments would have produced the exact mid-game hesitation and drive-killing decisions that national pundits loved to criticize. Instead, camp reporting reveals a stunning turning point in how Caleb approaches defensive pressure. Rather than asking Ben Johnson to dial back the intensity or run dial-it-in play calls to keep practice moving, Caleb is actively demanding more chaos. He is deliberately inviting Dennis Allen to throw his most complex, blitz-heavy schemes at him on every single rep. He wants the pocket collapsed. He wants zero blitzes flashed at the line. He wants safeties rolling into late coverages after the snap. This isn't reckless bravado. It's calculated inoculation. Caleb understands that the national narrative about his game was built on the idea that defensive coordinators could solve him by taking away his rhythm and forcing him into panicked improvisations. By subjecting himself to Dennis Allen's defensive crucible every morning in the heat of July, Caleb is systematically building immunity against every trick, stunt, and pressure package the rest of the league plans to throw at him in 2026. When Allen sends linebackers shooting through A-gap blitzes, Caleb isn't flinching or drifting backward anymore. He stands tall, processes the leverage in a fraction of a second, and rips the ball into tight windows before the pass rush can even complete its drop back. The practice field heat has produced electric moments of real, unscripted friction between the offense and defense. Trash talk echoes across the fields as Caleb trades barbs with veteran defensive backs after dropping dime throws over double coverage. But underneath the trash talk is a shared, dangerous realization creeping across the entire roster. The guy wearing number 18 isn't just surviving against one of the most aggressive defensive minds in football, he is dominating him. Caleb Williams is deliberately manufacturing stress in July so that September feels like child's play. He isn't waiting for the regular season to start proving his critics wrong. He is laying the foundation right now on the practice fields of Lake Forest. By taking the fight directly to his own defense, he is ensuring that when opposing defensive coordinators bring their best blitz schemes in 2026, they aren't going to find a flustered young quarterback. They are going to run headfirst into a master of the storm. The stage is set, the narratives are written, and the silence inside Lake Forest has turned into a ticking clock. As the 2026 season approaches, the time for projection, practice tape, and summer debate is officially over. Everything Caleb Williams, Ben Johnson, and the Chicago Bears have built over the last 12 months now converges on a single, high-stakes football season. But make no mistake, this is no longer a standard second-year continuation or a cozy rebuilding story. The national disrespect, the 51st ranking, and the persistent media claims that Caleb hit an early ceiling have transformed 2026 into an absolute ultimatum. The threshold for what constitutes success in Chicago has been permanently elevated. In a town historically starved for elite quarterback play, passing for nearly 4,000 yards and capturing a division title used to be the stuff of legendary folklore. Today, those numbers represent merely the starting baseline. To erase the doubts manufactured by his critics and silence the voters who dismissed his breakthrough season, Caleb doesn't just need to match his 2025 production, he has to shatter it. The 4,000-yard passing mark, a ceiling no Bears quarterback has ever crossed in the franchise's storied century-long history, is no longer just a milestone. It is the minimum entry fee required to command the respect he was denied. With Ben Johnson's re-engineered offense operating at maximum tempo, a retooled receiving core anchored by Odunze and Colston Loveland, and a defense forged in the fire of summer camp battles, all the excuses have been stripped away. The infrastructure is elite, the playbook is tailor-made, the surrounding talent is loaded. The pressure resting on number 18's shoulders is immense, but it is precisely the kind of pressure that transforms great talents into iconic legends. Caleb Williams isn't playing for accolades, contract extensions, or defensive statistics anymore. He is playing for absolute vindication. Every dropback in 2026, every blitz stepped over in a collapsing pocket, every precision slant thrown on 3rd and 8 is a direct, calculated response to the league that tried to write him off. He is playing to force an entire industry of pundits, voters, and rival players to sit in front of their screens and issue a public, unanimous apology to the city of Chicago. We are standing on the precipice of a season that will define the trajectory of a franchise and the legacy of its most gifted signal caller. The trap has been set, the blueprint has been mastered, and the fire inside Hallas Hall is burning out of control. The only question left standing as the curtain rises on 2026 is simple. Will Caleb Williams' Ruthless Revenge Tour finally deliver Chicago its first true superstar MVP quarterback?